Hey guys, here's your friend Genzianella. Welcome to my home and welcome to the second episode of Genzianella Tales. Today I'm gonna tell you the story of Siria, the brave dog. Are you ready? Here we go. Siria was a dog, a lovely little dog. Nobody knew much about her father, a Caucasian shepherd who worked as a sheepdog and who could manage, thanks to his strength and courage, even the most numerous flocks of sheep. Siria's mother's name was Gilda, and she was a splendid specimen of Australian shepherd. Well, Siria was the result of this perfect match, Gilda and the mysterious Caucasian shepherd. Her hair was fluffy and rich in shades, even if the main colors were black, beige, and light brown. She had two little black rings around her eyes, so that she looked as if she had put on makeup, and a sort of tiny little skirt sketched around her tail, which gave her a very elegant appearance. Siria spent the first months of her life happy and protected by Gilda, together with her two little brothers. But then, when she was only 3 months old, her owner, an ugly and stingy bumpkin, decided to get rid of what he called the 3 little monsters. So he snatched the 3 puppies from between Gilda's paws, put them in a sack, and then into the boot of his car. As fate would have it, however, this horrible person had problems with his lower parts. So he had to pee quite often. In fact, it often happened that he peed his pants, and on that particular day, while he was driving with the 3 puppies in the boot of his car, he had to stop because... Bravo! That was precisely what was going to happen. He jumped out of his car and opened the boot to grab some newspaper to clean himself. Yeah, since he also had to poop. And he squatted behind the bush nearby, leaving the boot open. Right then, Carlotta, a young woman, was walking Rolly, her wise-looking mongrel with a little bit of beige on his muzzle. Rolly immediately understood that something was wrong and started barking furiously at the open boot. As an answer, Siria whined weakly from the bottom of the big sack. Carlotta heard her and got near to take a look. Meanwhile, Rolly was barking like mad. He was saying in dog language, "Don't you worry, little ones! Rolly and Carlotta are here to rescue you!" It so happened that Carlotta found the sack, opened it, and the first thing she saw were Siria's wide, scared eyes looking at her from the bottom of the big sack. Carlotta immediately called the police and the animal rescue organization. Siria and their brothers were then rescued and taken to the local shelter, where they were cleaned and fed, and where they waited to be adopted by some loving family. And so it was, at least in Siria's brother's case, who were adopted by 2 different families after a little while. Siria, however, didn't get adopted by anyone because she had become shy and wary with human beings. She was afraid that whoever would adopt her could hurt her the way her horrible owner had tried to do. Time went by, and Siria became bigger and sadder. She was 6 months old when one day there was an unexpected call by a lady who sounded so sweet and kind. She had seen Siria's photo and wanted to adopt her. This lady lived very far away, and Siria had to go on a long journey to reach her. So she found herself inside the pet carrier, which was inside a train carriage directed to the place where her new owner lived. Siria didn't know what to expect, but she was comforted by the fact that in that carriage there were other pet carriers and other dogs. Among the latter, there was Giotto, a very nice and lively lagotto who loved running, rolling in the mud, and having fun. Moreover, Giotto had a particular quality. He was an exceptional dancer. When Giotto saw Siria, he immediately understood that she was scared and worried. So he started dancing and singing to cheer her up. "You don't have to worry about nothing, dear, 'cause happiness is near. From now on, your preoccupations are just an invention. You gotta try and smile, 'cause sadness has come by. And your new home for you is waiting, and something good is cooking." Thanks to this little show, Giotto managed to give Siria some comfort during the long journey towards her new home. When she reached their destination, Siria met Teresa, her new owner. Teresa was an elderly lady with funny and benevolent ways. At first, Siria was worried, but then she thought that in time she would be able to trust that sweet, kind lady. Teresa took Siria to her new home. It was in the country, and when they got there, Siria had a big surprise. In that house, there were 3 dogs living with Teresa. There was Ugo, a white boxer whose muzzle was as soft as whipped cream. There was Mia, a small, lively poodle. And then there was Ettore, a fiery Caucasian shepherd. He was handsome and passionate, and caught Siria's attention from the start. And later, he stole her heart. Siria spent the following months with Teresa and their new friends. She still felt worried and diffident, but things were gradually improving. When Siria was 1 year old, she and Ettore became a couple, and Siria gave birth to 2 puppies, a boy and a girl. They were simply wonderful. They were as fluffy as clouds, and they were so lovely that it seemed they had been painted by the best painter in the world. Everything seemed to be turning out all right in Siria's life. When one night, the unexpected happened. In the house next door lived Dungo, a quarrelsome dog who couldn't stand the fact that all the dogs in the neighborhood thought that Ettore was the strongest, and had been longing for some time to confront and defeat him. That night, Dungo's wish was so strong that he couldn't resist it any longer. He leapt over his garden fence and then Teresa's, so as to find himself face to face with Ettore, who was sleeping peacefully in the garden, together with Siria, the 2 puppies, and Mia. All of a sudden, Dungo appeared in Teresa's garden and attacked Ettore, who couldn't react promptly and lay injured on the ground. Siria and Mia, scared to death, could only try and protect the puppies. Meanwhile, Ugo, who used to sleep indoors since he had short hair and was too cold for him to sleep outside, rushed out to defend Ettore, his lifelong friend. And even if he wasn't big enough to confront Dungo in combat, thanks to his courage, he managed to chase him away. During Ugo and Dungo's fight, Teresa had gone out in the garden to see what was happening, as she had been woken up by all that barking. When she saw that scene, she got so scared that she felt sick. She was taken to the hospital, where she recovered, but she couldn't get back to her former life, and had to go and live in a nursing home, and couldn't look after her pets any longer. As a consequence, Siria and her friends were taken to the local shelter, in the hope of being adopted again. Siria was once again sad and discouraged. Months went by, and the situation didn't improve when Ettore and the 2 puppies were adopted, each one by a different family. After a little while, Siria had to say goodbye to me and Ugo as well, as they were transferred to another shelter. Siria was left alone, and she got more and more diffident and shy. After a few more months, the people who worked in the shelter organized a public event so that the locals could take a look at the dogs and hopefully adopt them. All the dogs were taken to the biggest park in the area on a beautiful sunny day in spring. Siria secretly hoped that someone would adopt her, but was afraid at the same time. Yeah, because she neither wanted to be ill-treated, as had happened with the horrible man who peed his pants, nor suffer once more, like when she had to leave Teresa's house. For these reasons, Siria would keep apart from others nearly all day, while the other dogs did their best to show off in front of the locals. It then happened that a young woman got near her and gently crouched down next to her. She had long brown hair, which was wavy and a little uncombed. She was wearing big yellow glasses, behind which green eyes were shining. Looking at those eyes, Siria had a feeling of peace and safety. That feeling did not fade away, but got stronger when the young woman stretched her hand to stroke her, with extreme gentleness. In that moment, Siria had a feeling of warmth and comfort that took her back to the first 3 months of her life, when she was happy and protected by her mother Gilda. Could that young woman be her new mom? The spell was suddenly broken by a man's voice. "Hey, Margherita! Come and see how nice this little bully is!" He was probably the young woman's partner, and was standing nearby flirting with a 4-month-old French bulldog puppy, whose name was Lola, who had somehow landed in the shelter as well. Margherita went towards her boyfriend and Lola, but only after smiling brightly at Siria. At that moment, a group of people stood between Siria and Margherita, and Siria couldn't see Margherita any longer. Then Siria heard Margherita's boyfriend say, talking about Lola, "Come on, let's take her home. She's so lovely." The sun was slowly setting, and the dogs were taken back to the shelter. Siria was sad and embittered. For a moment, she had really believed that Margherita could be her new mom. She was also angry with herself, yet because she knew that she could have done something more to show Margherita that she really wanted to go home with her. That night, Siria got to sleep thinking that maybe she had to give up hope and live the rest of her life in a shelter. The following morning, Siria was woken up by the singing of a nice blackbird that sometimes hovered near the shelter. Siria also heard the indistinct voices of different people. It was some of the locals who had come to the event of the previous day and who had now come to take home the dogs they had chosen. Siria was distressed because she knew that none of them was there for her. Right at that moment, the shape of a young woman appeared among them. It was Margherita. That she was eagerly moving her bright green eyes, looking for something or someone. She wasn't surely looking for Lola, who a few feet away was eagerly kissing a chubby blonde girl's face. It was then that Siria understood that she had to take a chance. All the disappointment, the suffering, the discomfort and the sadness which had been with her up to that moment became strength, longing and courage. Siria threw herself against the bars of her cage and started howling, barking and whining like mad. She made a terrible racket till she caught Margherita's attention. When Margherita saw her, she gave her such a big smile that it hardly seemed to find room on her face. Margherita ran towards Siria that in the meantime had started jumping like a frog, standing on her hind legs. Margherita finally reached the cage, opened its door, and Siria sprang out greeting her happily. Then she stood and put her forelegs on Margherita's chest, and Margherita hugged her. Siria kissed her new mother's face eagerly. A little back, in the background, Margherita's boyfriend was watching the scene. A smile appeared on his face. This was the story of Siria, the brave dog. Now all I have to do is say, see you next time for the next episode. And remember, smile, because life is good, fella. Listen to Genzianella.